Yan. Siguro yung grade, kung maitataas pa, I will look at the attendance in the online class. Okay? Wala eh. Ilan lang tong gumawa ng performance task. So, kung nag-ready sila, siguro ngayon meron na eh. 12 lang to. Ito lang yung gumawa ng performance task. So, I think lalo lang silang babagsak kapag nagdagdag pa ako eh. Kawawa naman. Tapos, karamihan pa gusto mag-enroll sa UCC Yan. Karamihan pa gusto mag-enroll sa UCC. Mag-headset na lang. Hindi kaya ng laptop ko yung signal sa labas. So, yan. Ano nga yung sinasabi ko? Ayan, lalong babagsak yung iba eh. Tapos gusto mag-enroll sa UCC, sa mga state colleges. And I don't think makaka-line of 8 kapag walang performance task. Sana madinig nila tong Sana madinig nila tong mga sinabi ko before we start the exercises. Okay. Are you ready? To check tayo ha. Saan na ba yan? Sagutan natin. Before we start answering, baka maaga tayo matapos. Do you have any na lang yung gawin nating introduction? Meron ba? Marushka and Raven, may tanong ba kayo about dun sa ating video lesson? Meron ba kayong part na hindi? Hello.
Naiintindihan naman po, sir. Wala naman po.
Ikaw, Wasmin, may tanong ka ba? Solis?
Wala naman po.
Okay. So, let's answer. So, for mathematical induction, we have 3 parts. If you watch the video lesson, I will not discuss in detail in here because I would like you to watch the video lesson before answering the exercises. So, dito, sasagutan lang natin. Pero still, we'll explain each part. We have 3 parts. The basic idea about mathematical induction is that improving by induction, di ba? You know the induction method. It begins with particular statements or specifics before and then it leads to a general statements. That's the inductive method. No? So the same thing in mathematics, we use uh, the inductive method by doing specific examples or particular examples that satisfies the equation. And then uh, next is we assume that the same thing holds true with the next uh, instance, in our case, in the next positive integer, in the next counting number. And then uh, this now will imply that the equation or the formula holds true for all uh, elements of the set in the domain of the equation. Tignan natin. So for example, let us answer item number 1 of the exercises. Hindi ko pa napatungan tong arithmetic and geometric. Burayin natin yan. Yan. So for every natural number, this is what I mean by the domain of the or the restrictions in the formula. This means that the formula won't uh, does not hold true for numbers that are not elements of the natural numbers. Ah, Kaya sabi dito, for every natural number n, prove the proposition P of n given by 1 plus 2 plus 3. Basically, this is the sum of consecutive counting numbers from 1 until n. Parang ganun lang, no? So, kung isusulat natin to in summation notation, magpapalit lang akong tinta. Yan. In summation notation, kung isusulat natin to, summation of all n from n equals 1 until n. O, ganun lang naman, no? Okay. So, let us begin. So, in the video lesson, mathematical induction starts with the basic step or basis step. No? Uh, our proof, ganyan. Kapag ka math contest, sinisimulan natin yung statement kasi parang essay to eh. Our proof is by mathematical induction. Because there are many ways to prove statements, no? Nakuha ninyo yan sa geometry, meron kayong formal proof, merong uh, proof by contradiction, meron kayong paragraph, and then this one, mathematical induction, and many more. Okay, so part 1, we do the basis step. The basis step is when n is equal to 1. Why n is equal to 1? Because the natural numbers begins with 1. Another term for natural numbers, counting numbers. No? So when n is equal to 1, you have 1. Ibig sabihin nito, isang term lang, 1 lang. Excuse me. On the other side, 1 half of 1 times 1 plus 1. Yung mga n doon, pinalitan natin ng 1. Huh? So 1 is equal to 1 half, 1 plus 1 is 2, multiplied by 1 is itself. So 1 is equal to 1. So ibig sabihin, n equals 1 is true. By the way, in a mathematical induction, in a proof by mathematical induction, no? If the basis step fails, ibig sabihin, hindi siya nag-true or nag-yield true dun sa basis step, then that means the statement cannot be proven. Stop na pag hindi yan nag-true. Okay? And it's not always that we start with 1. Hindi laging n equals 1. In here, we started with n equals 1 because it says for all or for every natural number. O kapag ka sinabi dyan, for every natural number and n is greater than or equal to another number, let's say 4, o ibig sabihin, ang claim is that the formula holds true beginning with the natural number 4 and so on. Na? So, ang basis step mo in that case will be 4. Eh dito, wala naman. So, kaya 1 yung ating sisimulan. Pag sinabing for every whole number, then we will start the basis step with n is equal to 1. Is that understood? Malinaw ba yan, everyone? Huh?
Yes po.
Okay, let's
Opo.
continue. Now, after finding out that the basis step is uh, true, then we proceed to the inductive step. And the inductive step begins with the assumption. Yeah? Or pwede rin kasi itong maging 3 parts. Pwedeng yung part 2 natin, gawin nating assumption part. O, the assumption part. Yan. For n is equal to k. That means, we're assuming, na? Assume that 1 plus 2 plus 3, the same formula until k is equal to 1/2, what is the formula again? N times n plus 1. So that will be 1/2 k times k plus 1 is true. So nag-a-assume tayo, no? Is true for all k element of the natural numbers. Yeah. K element of the natural numbers. O, yan ay assumption. Yan yung part 2. Now, na, this implies that do sa 1, nag-true siya. So, for any value of n equal to k, magiging true din. Yun yung assumption natin. So, part 3 now is the inductive step. In the video lesson, magkasama yung assumption and inductive step. Pwede naman yan. No? The inductive step, this implies that n equals k plus 1 is true. That is the inductive step. Parang domino effect. Kapag nalaglag yung unang domino, yung kasunod, ibig sabihin, hanggang dun sa kaduluduluhan ng uh, pile of dominoes or line of dominoes, lalaglag yon. Parang domino effect yung ating tinitignan when we do inductive step. Okay. What do we do in the inductive step? Ibig sabihin, look at this one. Kung true ito hanggang k, ibig sabihin, true yung statement mula sa 1, true pa rin yung statement 1 plus 2, true pa rin yung statement 1 plus 2 plus 3, yung n magiging 3. Now, we assume that it's true until k. Ibig sabihin, kahit idagdag pa natin yung kasunod, true pa rin yung statement. So, the process in the inductive step will be that, isusulat pa rin ninyo, no, para malinaw. 1 plus 2 plus 3, the pattern continues, plus k. Idagdag natin yung kasunod, k plus 1. O, di ba, nagdadagdag lang ng 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3 until k plus 1. In the right-hand side of the equation, idagdag din natin yung kasunod na term, k plus 1. Okay? Now, what are we going to do this time? You're going to manipulate the right-hand side of the equation. Dito na lang kayo magwo-work sa right-hand side, no? Manipulate the right-hand side of the equation until you can show that, let us go back. Ito, minsan, in the other text, or I think for any book, hindi ito binabanggit. No? Ito yung cheat ng mathematical induction, I think. Meron kayong clue. No? How are you going to manipulate the right-hand side? Ito. Yan. This requires, of course, your knowledge of algebra, factoring, operations on polynomials. Ano yung cheat doon? You are working in such a way, you're going to work on the right-hand side in such a way that this formula is achieved. Yung n magiging k plus 1. Ano ina-expect mong lalabas doon sa right-hand side mo? 1/2 of k plus 1 times k plus 1 plus 1. Did you see that? Yung n literally, yung n literally naging k plus 1. Naintindihan? Nasusundan ba? Hello?
Opo, yes.
Okay. So, pag we-work out natin yung right-hand side, this is that expression on the right-hand side that tells us tapos na yung ating trabaho. Kasi gawa ka ng gawa dyan, hindi mo alam kung paano ka matatapos. Dapat alam mo kung saan yung end. Ito na, pag naging k plus 1 na yung end dyan sa formula at naipakita mo na, then that's enough. Gawin natin. So I told you, your knowledge of algebra is required in here. Makita ninyo, merong k plus 1 at k plus 1 doon sa magkabilang side. I-factor out mo yan. no? K plus 1 times 1 half, no? Times 1 half, lalabas natin yon. 1 half K plus 1. Nasundan? Pinactor out natin yung K plus 1. Okay? Question? Hello? Nasundan ba? Pinactor out natin yung K
Yes po.
plus 1. Okay, next. Let us rewrite the terms inside the bracket as a single term. So, kopyahin lang natin to. K plus 1. Doon sa loob ng bracket, LCD is 2 divided by 2 times K. So, that is K pa rin. Divided by 1 times 1, that is 2. Okay? Now, we can now uh, rewrite by commutative property of multiplication. Pwede nating ilabas yung denominator na 1 half. Labas natin yung 1 half times K plus 1 times K plus 2. And what is K plus 2? K plus 2 is K plus 1 plus 1. And that's it. Balik tayo doon sa itaas. Ayun yung ina-expect natin. No? So dito, tapos na. Okay? Pagdating na dyan, balik na naman sa pagiging mukhang essay uh, yung ating proof. No? Since the formula is true for n is equal to k plus 1, and then from 1 and 2, ano yung 1 and 2 natin? Yung ating basis and assumption. No? And assumption. From 1 and 2, no? We can say that 1 plus 2 plus 3, the pattern continues until n, 1 half n times n plus 1 is true, no? For all n element of natural numbers, and that is by mathematical induction. Okay, balikan natin, no? Mamaya yung 2 and 3, mabilisan na natin gagawin. Start with the basis step. If it's true, you proceed with the second step. Your second step will always be true because you are assuming that n equals k is true. And then in the inductive step, work out. Add mo yung next term. Work out on the right-hand side until you reach the formula written where n is k plus 1. And then your final statement. Do you have any question? Class? Wala? Question? Okay, wala naman. Sige. Merong nandito si Oclarit. Oclarit, do you have a performance task to present? Meron ba? Wala naman. Are you ready? Hello, Oclarit. Eman. Wala, hindi sumasagot. Sige, proceed tayo. Number 2, for every natural number n, ganun pa rin, ha? Wait lang. Wala. Sige, you only have, the last day is June 24, no? That's the last day. You have barely 3 weeks para kumpletuhin. And dun din yan, para dun sa mga manonood ng recording ng ating klase. Okay, let's go to number 2. For every natural number n, by the way, Ah, yung mga nandito, yung sagot ninyo, pareho ba sa number part 1 and part 2? Would you like me to check how you answered para makapag-comment ako? Gusto nyo bang isend yung sagot ninyo? Meron bang ganyan? Ayaw? Nahihiya? Maruska, Raven, do you have an answer where you would like me to comment on?
Okay lang po, sir.
Sige. Will you please try to send
Okay po.
a picture of it? Because tignan ninyo yung sagot natin. No? For this type of items in math, it's possible that you will have a different one no? From mine. Pwedeng maging magkaiba tayo. Pero dapat nandun yung mga parts. Basis, assumption, and then the inductive. And then pag binasa ko, then doon ko malalaman if it's considerable. Tingnan natin. Tayo natin yung sagot ni Maruska. Maaga pa naman. Maruska, are you trying to send it?
Okay na po.
Okay na. I'm waiting. Ba't wala? Hindi siya nagno-notify. Ayun. Okay. Tingnan natin to, no? For every natural numbers n, prove the proposition given by 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7 is equal to, and the pattern continues until the last term is 2n minus 1 is equal to n squared. So, if you will remember, no, during your junior high school, meron kayong mga classmates or meron kayong mga, kung kayo man yung mismo lumalaban sa MTAP, yung mga kabataan, they do it fast. Tama, ang ginagawa nila pagka ganyan, i-ganyan yung mga question. Ang bilis nilang mag-add, ang bilis nilang mag-compute. That is because this is the formula. Ito yung tinuturo sa kanila, yung formula, minememorize lang nila yan. So pag nakita nila, sum of all odd numbers from 1 until a certain number, let's say 111, ang bilis lang nilang i-add. Because the formula is just n squared. Find out the number of terms in the series and then square that. That will be the sum. No? At this time, pinuprove natin yung formula. Okay. 1 plus 3, this is basically the sum of all odd numbers from 1 until the last term. No? And the formula is 2n minus 1 for the last term. And then the sum is given by n squared. Okay, tingnan natin yung sagot ni Maruska. Basis step when n is equal to 1, that is correct. This is the sequence done in the video lesson. No? So 2 times 1 minus 1 is 1, then that is true. So we proceed to the inductive step. As I told you, in the inductive step, the assumption is already part of that, no, ng inductive step. So first, you assume that n equals k is true. No? When n equals k, no, assume, dagdag mo dyan, para alam na ina-assume mo yan. Assume when n equals k, you use the same formula for all k element of the natural numbers or for all natural number k. Okay? And then, the next uh, part is to add the next term. O, mapapansin nyo, ayun pa rin yung last term. Tama, very good. You add the next term. Ayun. Okay? And then, sa right-hand side, ano nangyari? Inadd mo to, i-add mo rin to sa right-hand side. Very good. And then, simplify this. Isi-simplify mo yan. Okay? Yun. So, dinistribute muna ni Marushka. Naging 2k plus 2 minus 1. Naging 2k plus 1. And then, it becomes a perfect square trinomial k squared plus 2k plus 1, which is then factored out as k plus 1, open close parenthesis, is squared. Huh? The resulting sum is the same when n, or is the same formula when n is equal to k plus 1. This is accepted. Di ba? Okay. Marushka, did you use another text or you based only on the video lesson?
I based on the video lesson lang po.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Very good. Tinanong ko lang, no? Sabi ko sa inyo, mag-comment kayo doon sa video lesson. Baka mamaya ay para for the next set of classes. Kasi, yung ating online class, I think hindi na to basta-basta iiwanan even when the pandemic is done with. No? Even after the pandemic, hindi na natin basta-basta may iwanan yung online class. My plan is that in the next school year, kahit na face-to-face classes na, gagawin ko naman siyang flip method. The discussion is on the discussions are on the video lessons already, and then the whole week the exercises will be enough for the students to go in front and then discuss the answers all by themselves dun sa blackboard, no? Sila yung magdi-discuss and I will just guide them. Parang magiging flipped classroom yung magiging start ko pagkatapos ng pandemic. I don't know what will be the setup during the first sem. Okay, thank you, Marushka. Number 3 tayo. Number 3, let us proceed. Ang bilis lang, no? Tinignan ko lang kay Marushka. Nagkataong tama naman. Nakasave ako ng isang solution. We have the solution of Marushka. Ganun lang din naman yung sasabihin yung statement na ganito sa last part. Right? Number 3 tayo. Prove that for every natural number n, 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared, the pattern continues until n squared is equal to n times the quantity n plus 1 times the quantity 2n plus 1 all over 6. Yung una, sum of consecutive positive integers. Ayan na yung formula, no? Yung pangalawa, sum of consecutive odd numbers beginning from 1. Yung pangalawa pala, yung sinagot ni Maruska. Ayan. And then yung pangatlo, sum of the squares of natural numbers. Kaya yung mga batang MTOP, yung mga MTOP babies natin, pag sinabi sa kanilang 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared, the pattern continues until 21 is squared, ang bilis nilang nasasagot because they memorize this formula. O di ano lang gagawin mo kung isasum mo ang 20 hanggang 21 squared? 21 times 22 times 43 over 6. Napakaigsi na lang nung i-compute mo. Makukuha mo na yung sum. Okay? Let's continue. Sagutan natin. Basis step. Our proof is by mathematical induction. No? Basis step when n is equal to 1. So that will be 1 squared, 1 times 1 plus 1 times 2 times 1 plus 1 all over 6. 1 squared is 1. 1, 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 times 1 plus 1 is 3 over 6. 1 times 2 times 3 is 6 over 6. That is 1. So n equals 1 is true. Next, assumption or the inductive step. Start natin sa assumption. Assume that n is equal. Assume that n equals k is true. So the formula becomes 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared. The pattern continues until k squared is equal to k times k plus 1 times 2k plus 1 all over 6. Tama ba? Okay? Okay. Next is the... Ay, nakalagot. Wait lang. Hindi ako nag dagdag ng mga parts. Yun, buti naman nagkaganyan. Yun, nawala siya. Oh. Saglit lang, ha. Oh, what did I do? Hmm, okay na yan. Let's proceed. Let's proceed. Next part is the inductive step. This implies that n equals k plus 1 is true, no? Uh, when n is equal to k plus 1, that's the better way to do it, no? Or a better way to write it. Kasi hindi pa natin naipapakitang true. So, when n is equal to k plus 1, we have on the left-hand side 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared. We add the next term and the formula still holds true. K plus 1 is squared. Alright? On the right-hand side, this becomes k times k plus 1, 2k plus 1 all over 6 plus k plus 1 is squared. Okay? So again, no, um, you're expecting after doing the manipulation of the right hand side, you're expecting the same formula in such a way that n becomes k plus 1. Right? Let's do that. Let's write this as a single fraction with 6 as the LCD. Of course, in the first fraction, we will retain the numerator. 6 divided by 6 is 1, multiplied by the numerator, so just the same. But on the second term, that will be 6 times the quantity k plus 1 squared. Alright? Now, in the numerator, you see that you have a common factor, a common binomial factor actually, that's k plus 1. So we have k plus 1, labas natin yan. Ano may iwan doon sa loob? We have sa first term in the numerator, no? K times 2k plus 1. In the other term, dahil k plus 1 squared yan, you will have 6 times k plus 1 all over 6 pa rin. Okay? Next, we don't have any more common factor in the inside the bracket. So, uh, expand natin yung mga nasa loob. K plus 1. But notice that k plus 1 is already 4 in the original formula that is already for n, no? Yung n na yun. So, ito na lang dalawa yung nawawala. Unti-unti, nare-realize mo yung gusto mong makuha. So, ano gagawin natin? Pasok natin yung k, magiging 2k squared plus k. Pasok natin yan 6, distributive property, magiging 6k plus 6 all over 6. So notice inside the bracket, you have a quadratic expression, k plus 1, 2k squared, add similar terms, plus 7k plus 6 all over 6. The remaining terms in the numerator, meron tayo doong n plus 1 times 2n plus 1, a product of two binomials, meron tayong quadratic trinomial dito. So we do factoring to that. Meron tayong 2k plus 1 or 2k squared plus 7k plus 6. Maipa-factor natin yan into two binomials. Factors ng 2k squared is k and 2k. Na? Factors ng 6 ay 3 at 2. Tama ba ako? 3 at 2. Okay. So, meron tayo tama ba? 3 at 2. 3, tama. 3 at 2. Ayan. 7 nga ba yung middle term? 4k, 3k. Tama. Okay. Ayan na. Notice that k plus 2, no? Wait lang. Split nga natin yung screen para nakikita natin yung ating tina-target. Ayan. Dito, pakita natin yung tina-target nating formula. Dapat yung mga n magiging k plus 1. No? Ayan. So, makita ninyo yung n, ayun na, k plus 1 na. No? Tapos yung n plus 1, ayun na yung k plus 2, i-rewrite na lang. Paano kaya magiging 2n plus 1 yung 2k plus 3? Pero, expectedly, yun na yun na. K plus 1. Yung k plus 2, rewrite natin. K plus 1 plus 1. Ayan yung k plus, yan yung n plus 1. Yung 2k plus 3, look at this. Gamit ako dito, pakita ko lang para isusulat ko na lang ng isang. Yung 2k plus 3 is 2k plus 2 plus 1. Tama? Dito sa 2k plus 2, this is 2 times k plus 1. And then you have plus 1. Siya rin yung 2k plus 3. So, yung 2k plus 3 can be written as 2 times k plus 1 plus 1 all over 6. So, from 1 and 2, by basis and assumption step and by the inductive step, the same formula holds true when n is equal to k plus 1. Therefore, sulat uli natin to. 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 3 squared. The pattern continues until n squared is n times n plus 1 times 2n plus 1 all over 6 for every natural number n. And that is the end of the proof. Do you have any question, class? Hello? Oh, may kausap pa ba ako?
None po.
None.
Wala po.
Wala. Okay. So, check your work, upload nyo ulit, and as much as possible, kumpletuhin ninyo ng mabilis. Hindi muna ako mag-check this week, pero tuloy-tuloy lang yung ating math calendar. Next week ako mag-check ng puspusan para matapos ko kaagad yung grade ninyo. Lalong-lalo na sa grade 12, na ang mga teachers, yung mga manonood ng late ng ating recording, yung mga teachers, aayusin na nila yung grade, magre-reading dahil mauuna yung inyo. Kailangan ma-identify yung mga gagraduate no? Para kapag kumuha kayo ng forms ay ganun din, mabilis din maibibigay sa inyo. Hindi, actually as scheduled dapat makuha ninyo yung mga forms ninyo, na. Konting ano na lang naman, konting stretch na lang. Paspasin na ninyo yung paggawa ng mga requirements. Pero siguro sa section nyo naman, wala naman masyadong problem. So, kung wala nang question at everything is clear naman, maaga tayong natapos. Thank you for attending the online class. Goodbye everyone. Dismiss na tayo.
Thank you po,
Thank
sir.
you
Bye
po,
po.
sir. Bye
Thank you
po.
po, sir.